You are the very proud owner of a vintage Majacraft Rose spinning wheel. You absolutely love your wheel. It's seen you through the ups and downs in life, and you can't even imagine what you did before you had your Majacraft Rose. Now, Majacraft made some changes to the Rose design in April of 2011. And what I want to do in this video is I want to take you through every single change and go into the details of what those changes were, why they made them, and how they benefit the performance of the Majacraft Rose wheel. I'm going to take my 2002 wheel and compare that with the 2021 wheel so you can really easily see what the changes were. And rest assured that yes, all the accessories that Majacraft offers for their spinning wheels will work on your vintage wheel. But I also want you to see some of the changes and how Majacraft has managed to improve an already great wheel into something really spectacular. I am Jennifer Johnson with Whispering Pines Farm. My husband and I raise a beautiful flock of soft Shetland sheep, and I'm also an authorized Majacraft dealer. And I'm committed to holding all the inventory of Majacraft products here on the farm in Western New York so that you, the hand spinner, don't have to wait to get the tools and equipment that you need to spin your dreams. Thank you so much for stopping by to watch the video. I hope you find the information helpful, and you can help me by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons below this video. I will be providing links for the Majacraft Rose in my shop, as well as a companion blog post that I wrote detailing every single change with photos and images to help you understand those changes better. All right, let's get started. What we have here is the 2021 Rose on this side, and this is my Rose I got in 2002. So as I said in the intro, the upgrade was done in April of 2011. So I'm going to just take you through some of the changes they made. From this angle, the changes you can see are pretty aesthetic. The first thing is the design of the rose. On this side, it's etched into the wood with like a darker design, totally different design than this rose, which is really just kind of engraved into the stem. So that's one difference. The second difference is the shape of the petals. So the petals on the older design have a more geometric, more squared off appearance. As you can see, more straight lines. On the new Rose, they're more angled, they're a little bit more sleek, a little more design aesthetic. Both wheels are made from the Rimu wood, the indigenous wood from New Zealand. It does appear that the older Rose is of a lighter wood grain than the new one, and that's really just lot to lot variation. There's really no difference in the wood that was used. Maybe the forests were slightly different, but it's the same. It's Rimu wood on both sides. Another difference that's very more functional than aesthetic is the locking mechanism when you tilt the head. So I'm going to show you, first we're going to look at the old Rose, and I'm going to show you what the problem is with how that works, and then the upgrade and how they managed to fix that. So when you want to tilt your head from side to side or use the feature of the handle on the Rose, you loosen the stem nut and then you tilt the stem over. On the old design, the head actually comes into contact with the treadle, and that causes issues. There's definitely scratches here on the side of my treadle because of that. If you can tighten it here and it will prevent it from hitting into the treadle, but there's no mechanical stop to prevent that from happening. Compare that with the new Rose. The new Rose, they actually designed in a mechanical stop that prevents that from touching the treadles. So that's definitely a significant upgrade to the design of the Rose wheel. So when you look at the wheel on a profile perspective, a couple things stand out. Number one is the stem support here is just built differently, a different aesthetic. And one of the things I pointed out to the folks at Majacraft is when you're spinning with a double treadle design, you can, if your wheel has got some momentum, you can just treadle with one foot and it'll treadle perfectly fine. So sometimes what I do if I've been working for a while is I'll treadle with one foot and I'll rest the other one here. Somebody sort of treat this as a footrest. So they've eliminated that option for me, which is probably a good thing because it's probably not a good idea to use your spinning wheel as a footrest. They also brought down the profile of the stem nut, a little bit more of an aesthetic than a functional change. Majacraft has made 2 modifications to the new Rose wheel in order to accommodate the overdrive head. So when the vintage wheel pre-April 2011 was around, the overdrive head didn't exist. So like I said, they had to tweak the design a little bit to be able to accommodate it. And the one thing that they did was they deepened the first groove, the smallest groove on the drive wheel, so that when you're using your brake band, I guess it was slipping out on the old design, so they've made a deeper groove here to prevent that brake band from slipping out. The second thing they did was on the old Rose, there's a handle nut on the top here where you're attaching your floating head. And when you look at the new Rose, it doesn't have a handle nut, it just uses this JCB bolt that sort of screws into the other side of the stem assembly. With that nut, when you're using that brake band, it can interfere and brush up against that handle nut. So what they've done is they offer a dome nut that you can use and replace that wooden handle nut that protrudes out pretty far in order to prevent that interference with the black brake band. So 2 things that were done on the new Rose for accommodating the overdrive head. Anywhere there's fastening or joining to be done on the new wheel, they have replaced wood screws with JCB bolts. And the benefit there is you're threading with a JCB bolt, you're threading into a threaded insert, so a metal insert on the other piece. And so you can thread it in and out many times without causing any wear. Unlike the old design, which uses wood screws threading into wood, if you take it apart and put it back together a number of times, you're gonna wear the receiving side so that it will not accept the wood screw any longer and it'll be kind of loose. This is critically important. So here's where they've gone to a JCB bolt at the stem assembly, but the crank assembly, let's take a look at that quickly. So we're now looking at I guess this is the back. I always struggle whenever people talk about the front and the back of their wheels, but this is the back. So this is the side that is facing out when you're spinning. You're sitting on this side. Now, they've gone with a JCB type system on the crank assembly as well. And this is important because on the receiving side of this, like I said, there's a metallic threaded insert that receives the screw, so you can thread and rethread many times without wearing out your threads. Whereas over here, you're threading into wood. This is why this is important. When you're changing your drive band, if you're doing it by removing the crank assembly, on the new design, you can do that many times without any after effect. On the old design, you've only got a few chances before you've worn out the wood and you're not going to be able to get a good seat with your wood screw. Having said that, I always recommend when you're changing your drive band that you do it at the joiner side and remove these wood screws here. And the reason is because joiners are very inexpensive, easy to replace if you do wear them out, which you won't. I've replaced 4 drive bands and my joiners are just as good now as they were when I first got the wheel. So just something to know with an older wheel. I know I've seen a couple of videos online where they say remove the crank assembly to change the drive band, and if it's an older wheel, that you could run into trouble over time where this will get kind of loose and jiggly. Another thing to point out is that the shaft that they're using is a thicker shaft. Now it's 10 millimeters, where on the old design it was 8. And this is important because it's a stronger design. So the thing that's important though is if you are going to be changing anything, let's say you need to replace your drive wheel for whatever reason, make sure you let your dealer know that you're talking about a pre-April 2011 wheel, because they need to make sure that everything fits correctly, the shaft, because of the changes to the drive shaft. The shape of the head has changed. This is the old head. And you can see it's pieces pieced together. So you've got very sharp angles on the head of the old Rose. On the new Rose, the head shape is more streamlined. It's all one piece, more curves, just a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. On the old Rose, you've got a metal plate that identifies the Majacraft brand. And the new rose, it's engraved right into the wood. Something else I want to point out about the changes to the rose over time is not necessarily specific to the rose, but there is a new bobbin design that Majacraft now provides with all of their wheels that come standard with the plastic bobbins. So the old rose I've got set up here with the older style bobbin. It's kind of like a drab brown, solid. It weighs about 1 ounce more than the new design, which has the cutouts on the side. It's much lighter. So this did not happen in April of 2011. This is more like 2019 when they made this change. And but just know that these are the standard bobbins that now come with every new wheel. And I would call that also an upgrade. When it comes to the accessories, the stuff that comes with the rose wheel, there were a few upgrades or changes made to those pieces parts as well. The Delta Flyer, which is, you know, it's the one with the triangle orifice, it's open, all open orifices. On the old design is square shaped. And then the rods are of a silver material, probably they feel like aluminum. On the new design, the flyer bar is kind of an oval shape, and you've got a black, feels more like a composite type material on the Delta Flyer. So that's different. And this is kind of the same with your standard fine flyer. On the old standard fine flyer, again, it was square with these aluminum rods. A big difference and a big upgrade, in my opinion, is on the old fine flyer, there was no ceramic lining. So it was just metal. And I'll show you a close-up here where I wore a groove in that metal, not because I was spinning with dirty fiber, but I just spun so much mileage on that wheel that it ended up wearing a groove. And it got to the point where it was breaking my fibers because there were sharp edges on the groove. So what they have now is a ceramic lined orifice, significant improvement, and then a change to the flyer bars, this black material. When we look at the Lazy Kate that comes with the Majacraft Rose, this is the old Lazy Kate. This is what came with my old Rose. So it's a bobbin box. It's got removable rods, brass rods. You can still get these if you've lost them or whatever, need more. Enough space for 3 bobbins, so you can do 3 ply, and a pretty engraved rose on the side. And you can set this up on its side. I'm going to be honest, I prefer the bobbin box as it was before. I think that the new bobbin carrier is adorable, very fetching, but I just feel the functionality of the box is a little bit more my style. So this comes with, you get 4 bobbins. 4 plastic bobbins with your Majacraft Rose now, and you also got that before. So there's 3 rods, a handle. There's a magnet here, which is kind of cool for your Allen wrench, which you use when you're replacing your whorl. The whorl has not changed. You get a large whorl and a Susie whorl with your rose as standard. It just sits on this little peg. No magnet here, it just sits there as cute as can be. So that's also a change from the old rose to the new. So I've gone through all the detail of what they've done to make the change to the rose. And like I said before, if you have a vintage rose, you can still use all the accessories. There's nothing that's preventing you from getting yourself a stylus kit or a lace kit and using it on your vintage rose. However, when you are going to buy replacement parts, whether it be the crank assembly or drive wheel for your pre-April 2011 rose, make sure you let your dealer or the factory know so that they can select the correct parts, because otherwise they're always going to assume that we're talking about the latest design. How are you going to know that you have a vintage rose? You can take a look at all the different changes that I pointed out in my video, but the other thing you can do is if you look at the bottom of your rose, there is a serial number there. You can send that to the factory and they can tell you whether it's pre or post, but you can actually just look at your rose and you'll know based on the information I've provided here. So thanks again for watching the video. Hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you next time.